Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at HR data,
Okay.
which may sound a little dry at first,
Right.
but I think once we really get into it,
Yeah.
you'll see that this data can really make or break a company's success.
Absolutely.
So we're going to be talking about recruitment,
Yeah.
staffing, and onboarding,
The core.
all the stuff that really makes a company tick.
It's funny how this data often kind of flies under the radar, but it's such a gold mine of insights into a company's most valuable asset. It's people.
Yeah, and we're working with a couple of interesting sources today.
Okay.
We've got a YouTube video from Business Casual,
Oh, yeah.
where they kind of go all in on Power BI,
Yeah.
which is this really cool tool for visualizing data.
Yeah.
And then we've also got this document that's packed with info on staff data.
Great.
So our mission today is to arm you with the knowledge to ask the right questions about this data,
That's key.
whether you're an HR expert or just curious about how this stuff really works
It can make all the difference.
behind the scenes.
Yeah. Asking the right questions can lead to smarter hiring, better employee retention, and ultimately a more successful company.
Okay, so let's kick things off with the basics.
Right.
Accessing and storing this data.
So think of data access like the key to unlocking all this information about your workforce.
Okay.
Is having the permissions to see it, change it, copy it, or even move it around.
Like having a backstage pass to all the employee info.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, this data can be stored in two main ways.
Okay.
At rest, sitting in a database, or in motion as it's being transferred. For this deep dive, we're going to focus on data at rest.
Got it. No chasing after data that's constantly moving.
Right.
So how is this at-rest data actually stored?
Traditionally, there are two main methods:
Okay.
sequential access and random access.
Okay.
So imagine you have a filing cabinet, right?
Uh-huh.
With sequential access, you have to go through each file one by one until you find what you're looking for.
Sounds like searching for a contact in an old-school phone book.
It can be a little tedious.
Yeah. Sometimes, though, it's faster than random access. Now, random access is like having a system where you can jump directly to the file that you need.
So random access is like having a data GPS.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
But for someone working in HR, do you really need to be a tech expert to understand how your company stores data?
Right.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
It's helpful to have a basic grasp on these concepts, but the most important thing is knowing how to find the data you need to make those smart decisions.
Now that we've covered how data is stored and accessed, let's shift gears and talk about the tools that can help us make sense of it all.
Okay.
I'm especially curious about Power BI after seeing that Business Casual video.
Yes, they seem pretty excited about it.
They did.
And for good reason. So you're probably familiar with Microsoft Excel.
Yeah.
Which is great for like basic data stuff, but Power BI takes it up a notch.
Okay.
It's like having a data designer on your team that can turn those rows and columns into eye-catching dashboards and reports.
So instead of staring at mind-numbing spreadsheets, I can see the data come to life through visuals.
Exactly. Visualizing data makes it way easier to understand and act on, which is super important for HR folks
Makes sense.
who need to share these insights with others and use them to make decisions.
It's like turning data into a story, right?
Absolutely.
So before we get lost in the world of visuals, let's talk about the building blocks of data. Variables.
Right.
Do you break that down for us?
Think of variables as labels on those filing cabinets we talked about earlier.
Okay.
They help you pinpoint the exact information that you need within a sea of data.
Kind of like searching for candidates with specific skills on a job site.
Exactly. In a database, variables are used in queries, which are like instructions for pulling out specific data. So for example, let's say you want to find all the employees who joined the company last year.
Okay.
You would use variables like start date and department to filter the data and get your answer.
So using the right variables is key to getting the information that HR needs from their databases.
Absolutely.
Now let's bring this back to the core functions of HR staffing, recruitment, and onboarding.
Okay.
These terms sometimes get thrown around interchangeably,
Right.
but our source material makes it very clear that they're not the same thing.
Yes.
What are the key differences between these three processes? You're right, they are definitely related but distinct. I'm picturing it like a relay race.
Okay.
You start with recruitment, search for the right candidates.
Yeah.
Then you pass the baton to staffing, which is about making sure you have the right people and the right roles at the right time.
Right.
Finally, you hand it off to onboarding, where you welcome those new hires and help them get settled.
That's a great way to visualize it. And from a data perspective, it's crucial for companies to gather and organize information from each stage of this relay race.
So it's not just about collecting the data, but connecting it across these different HR processes.
Exactly.
Why is that so important?
Well, by analyzing the data across these three areas,
Okay.
HR professionals can uncover some really valuable insights.
Uh-huh.
For example, they can track things like how much it costs to hire someone,
Okay.
how long it takes to fill open positions, and even how well new employees are integrating into the company.
So you're saying that data can help companies find better candidates, get them onboarded faster, and ultimately keep them around longer?
Exactly.
Okay, I'm seeing the value here, but let's back up a bit.
All right.
Where does all this HR data come from in the first place?
Well, it comes from a mix of internal and external sources.
Okay.
Think of internal sources as information that's already within the company, like employee records, performance reviews, or data from your applicant tracking system.
So all those forms we fill out and systems we use are actually generating valuable data.
Absolutely. Then you have external sources,
Okay.
which could be things like data from recruitment websites, salary surveys, or even partnerships with other organizations.
Interesting. So every company might have a slightly different mix of data sources they're working with.
That's right, and that raises a question for you.
Was that?
What data sources does your company use?
That's a good question.
It's worth thinking about what information is available and what insights you could be gleaning from it.
That's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
It's making me realize there's probably a lot of valuable data out there that we're not even tapping into.
Right.
But having all this data is one thing. Knowing how to use it effectively is another.
You're hitting the nail on the head there.
Yeah.
It's not just about collecting data.
Okay.
It's about knowing what questions to ask to unlock its true potential.
All right, let's dive into that then.
Okay.
It feels like we've laid the groundwork understanding what data is,
Right.
how it's stored, and where it comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's time to talk about how to make it work for us.
Exactly. Remember, data without the right questions is like a ship without a rudder.
Okay.
It's just drifting aimlessly. Data insights only emerge when you ask targeted and insightful questions.
So it's not just about gathering data for the sake of it,
Right.
but using it to answer specific questions and solve actual problems within the company.
Let's say your company is struggling to attract top talent in a particular field.
Okay.
What are some questions you could ask to uncover the root of the problem? Maybe you start by asking, what is our cost per hire compared to industry benchmarks?
Okay.
Are we using the most effective recruitment strategies?
Mm-hmm.
How long does it typically take us to fill these positions?
Those are some really specific questions, and I can already see how the answers could reveal areas for improvement.
Exactly. Or imagine your company is facing high employee turnover. The
Right.
question shouldn't just be, why are people leaving?
Okay.
You need to get more specific.
Right.
You might ask, what percentage of our high performers are leaving? What are the common reasons they cite for their departure?
Yeah.
What is the financial impact of losing these key employees?
I see what you mean. It's about digging deeper and asking questions that can really pinpoint the underlying issues.
Exactly. And I'm guessing the answers can reveal some pretty surprising insights too.
Yeah, I bet they do.
Often they do. And those insights can help HR professionals identify trends, uncover hidden patterns, and ultimately come up with solutions that make a real impact on the company's success.
This is making me realize how powerful data can be in the hands of HR.
Right.
It's not just about crunching numbers, it's about understanding people and using that knowledge to create a better work environment.
That's exactly right. It's about using data to improve the human experience within an organization.
But with all this data swirling around, it can feel a bit overwhelming.
Sure.
Do you have any tips for how to even start crafting those effective questions? Where do you begin?
Absolutely. First, take a step back and think about the specific challenges your company is facing in terms of HR.
Yep.
What are the pain points? What needs to be improved?
So start with the problem you're trying to solve.
Right. Then think about what kind of data you have available or could collect.
Okay.
That might shed some light on that problem.
It's about connecting the dots between the problem and the data that might hold the solution.
Exactly. And when you're formulating your questions,
Okay.
Make sure they're clear, concise, and most importantly, measurable.
Measurable. Can you explain what you mean by that?
it means framing your questions in a way that allows you to quantify the answers.
Okay.
For example, instead of asking, are our employees satisfied?
Right.
Ask, what percentage of employees report high levels of job satisfaction. That way you can track progress over time and see if the needle is moving in the right direction.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about getting concrete data points that you can actually track and measure.
Right, and don't forget the power of asking why.
Okay.
Why is this trend happening? Why are we seeing these results? Digging deeper often reveals the most valuable insights.
It's like being a data detective, uncovering clues and piecing together the story behind the numbers.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see how this can be applied to so many different areas within HR.
It really can. By embracing curiosity and asking the right questions, you can transform HR data from a bunch of numbers into a source of strategic insights that can shape the future of your company.
This has been incredibly eye-opening. I'm starting to look at HR data in a whole new light.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's not just about administrative tasks and spreadsheets.
Yeah.
It's about understanding people solving problems
Yeah.
and creating a more successful and fulfilling work environment.
That's what makes it so fascinating. And with tools like Power BI, making data visualization more accessible than ever,
Right.
there's really no limit to the insights you can discover.
Speaking of Power BI, I'm definitely putting that at the top of my to-do list.
Yeah.
And I encourage all of our listeners to do the same.
It's a game changer for anyone who wants to make data-driven decisions.
So to wrap up this part of our deep dive, we've gone through the essentials of data access, storage, and retrieval.
Right.
We've talked about those crucial building blocks of data,
Yeah.
those variables that help us unlock specific information, and we've seen how data can be applied to improve those key HR functions of staffing, recruitment, and onboarding.
Right.
But most importantly, we've learned that the real magic happens when we start asking the right questions.
You've summed it up perfectly, but before we move on, I want to leave our listeners with one final provocative thought.
Okay, I like it.
Think about a specific HR challenge your company is facing.
Yeah.
What data could you gather and analyze to get a deeper understanding of that challenge? What questions would you ask?
That's a great challenge for our listeners to ponder.
It is in a way because knowledge is most powerful when it's put into practice.
Well said. Who knows? Maybe one of our listeners will uncover the next groundbreaking HR insight that will transform their company,
It's possible.
or even their entire industry.
I wouldn't be surprised at all. There are endless possibilities when we embrace the power of data.
On that note, let's wrap up this part of our deep dive into HR data. We'll be back soon to continue the conversation. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been on quite a journey exploring the world of HR data, and I'm so eager to hear what's resonating with you.
Me too. It's been fascinating to unpack how this data, often overlooked, can be a real game changer for companies.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
From how this data is stored and access to its role in recruitment, staffing, and onboarding. But the real takeaway for me has been the importance of asking the right questions.
Absolutely.
It's not just about having the data, it's about knowing how to use it to solve problems and make better decisions.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Remember those key questions we discussed? Like,
Yeah.
what's our cost per hire?
Yeah.
Or what percentage of our top performers are we retaining?
Right. Yeah.
Those are the kinds of questions that can really spark positive change within a company.
And those answers don't just impact HR, they impact the entire business.
Absolutely.
Knowing how to leverage HR data can give companies a real competitive edge.
Exactly. It's about connecting the dots between data about people and the overall success of the business. When you understand things like employee engagement, turnover rates, and skill gaps,
Yeah.
you can make smarter decisions about attracting, developing, and keeping great talent.
It's almost like HR data holds the secret formula for building a thriving and successful workforce.
In a way, it does, but any good formula, you
Yeah.
need to understand the ingredients and how they work together.
Okay.
That's where data analysis and visualization come in.
Makes sense.
Remember that YouTube video we mentioned from Business Casual about Power BI?
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely adding that to my list. I can already see how powerful it would be to transform those rows and columns into visuals that tell a compelling story.
Imagine being able to present to your leadership team not with dry numbers and bullet points,
Right.
but with interactive dashboards that clearly highlight trends and insights.
Yeah.
That's how you capture their attention and get everyone on board.
It's about making data engaging and relatable, no more boring presentations.
Exactly. And with tools like Power BI becoming more and more user-friendly,
Yeah.
you don't need to be a data whiz to unlock these insights.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
what's the key message we want our listeners to walk away with?
I think the most important takeaway is this.
Okay.
Understanding HR data empowers you to ask better questions, which leads to better decisions within your organization.
It's like we've given our listeners a new superpower.
Yeah.
The ability to see beyond the surface and understand the stories hidden within the data.
And with that superpower comes a responsibility to use it wisely,
Oh.
to always be questioning assumptions, to consider the ethical implications, and to use data to drive positive change both for individuals and the company as a whole.
Well said. So what's one action our listeners can take today to put this knowledge into practice? What's that first step?
I encourage everyone to explore Power BI
Okay.
or another data visualization tool. Play around with it. See what you can learn from your own company's data. You might be surprised by what you discover.
That's a great challenge. And remember, exploring data doesn't have to be a chore. It can be a fascinating journey of discovery and maybe even a little bit of fun along the way.
Couldn't agree more. Until next time, keep asking those insightful questions and keep diving deep.
And that concludes our deep dive into the world of HR data.
Thanks for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the journey and come away with a new appreciation for the power of this data to shape the future of work. Thanks for listening.